So let's start at the beginning and have you set up a little bit of the plot because it's a pretty interesting one. Talk a little bit about kind of the basics of the plot and who your character is.
We start the film with Jessica, who is waiting at her house for her husband. She has just learned that her husband has been cheating on her, and she proposes that they go on vacation to find a way to reunite. While they're away, a lot of things happen that were unexpected, and we start to really see what's actually going on. So I think this film is an exploration of what Jessica says she wants, but maybe what she really wants consciously.
And it's also plays a little bit with the idea of like what's real and what isn't real, and kind of gets into that sort of gray area in relationships where you're not kind of quite sure what's going on. What do you think? She obviously at the beginning we learned that there's a betrayal by her husband, but then as they get into this vacation house, there's a lot more elements that come into play. What do you think's going through her head during this whole period?
I think if you've been betrayed, clearly there's a reason why it's happened. I think that there isn't. It's if a betrayal is the byproduct of a problem within the relationship. Yeah. So I think that when you see how John and Jessica interact in the beginning of the film, you obviously think she might not be so likable with the way that she talks to him, the way that she forces things upon him, the threats that she makes, the bullying. And I think that while the film is going, as we're going through the film, you realize that these two people aren't on the same page. They don't want the same things. They don't have the same values. And so things go awry. I guess that gray area that you're talking about is what's explored in this film. But I think in the horror genre, it's just more kind of magical. Like everything is much more exaggerated. So you get to look at the darkness and you can make it into something else.
Yeah. What for you was the scariest or the most suspenseful scene to film?
The most, as you're saying that, I was just thinking about that. The most frightening thing is when you don't know who you're looking at. When you think that you know a person, but then you're looking at them and as they're revealing who they are, you're going, wow, this whole time, I thought you were one thing. In truth, you're something else. And if that person's your spouse, it's even more frightening. So that was the scariest thing about it for me, is the exploration of what that relationship is. How far can you go? Like, what can you do to each other? I mean, how destructive can you get?
That's true, because that actually is the scariest thing, that the person that you trust the most is actually not at all the person that you think they are.
Exactly.
And that is actually scarier than, just some random person coming out of the woods and, stabbing you. It's because it's so much more intimate. So for what scene for you, was the most difficult to film?
If you have high emotions, for example, like if you're crying or if you're doing these things, then that means that you're doing something. And the truth is that there's a journey that Jessica goes through. And so I really wanted to explore this part of her that really tests how far she would go. So is she capable of killing people? If you're around the wrong, if you're around the wrong kind of person all the time, sometimes they can bring out the worst in you. So I was just curious about what that worst looks like for Jessica. And so there was a scene in the film where I have to shoot Isaac. And so that scene was really interesting because I was going, what would it take for me to hold this shotgun and shoot this person? And his speech at the end, when he says that, I don't know, am I the devil? What am I? So I was just going, sometimes the people or the situations that we might be in that seem like the worst might be the greatest gifts, because they might make us better people.
What for you, when you look back at this experience of shooting the film, maybe 10 years from now, what's the moment that you'll remember that was sort of most emblematic of working on this film?
There were several actually. I remember the very first scene that I shot with Paul, and I you could play that scene in a number of different ways, but I thought that keeping it quiet and kind of there was something so cold about that home, about those white walls and her suit. And he comes in and he, in a way, was very human. And I felt like I was very much that ice. I was the reflection of that empty kind of vessel of a home. And so I thought that moment was really interesting how it happened.